Have you ever tried to change, to break free from a habit that seems harmless at first, only to watch it quietly consume your days, your energy, your sense of control? Alex knows this feeling all too well. Each morning, they promise themselves, "Today will be different." Yet by mid-afternoon, the same patterns creep in, almost silently, like shadows stretching across a room. The overeating, the endless scrolling through social media feeds, the procrastination that fills their hours with empty tasks. Each one chips away at the vision of who Alex wants to be. There's a knot of frustration in the stomach, a heaviness in the chest, a sense of shame that isn't loud but persistent. Friends offer advice, books promise shortcuts, and countless apps assure that change is just a click away, yet nothing sticks. The more Alex tries to force willpower, the harder it becomes to hold on to the initial surge of motivation until it collapses under the weight of old routine. The failure feels personal, almost humiliating. Alex remembers sitting at the kitchen table one evening, leftover snacks scattered around, phone glowing with notifications of tasks undone. There was a sharp sting in seeing another day, another week, lost to habits they despise. The mind whispers, maybe you're not strong enough. Maybe this is just who you are. It is not just about overeating or wasting time. It is about identity. Every relapse feels like proof that change is impossible. And with each failure, self-esteem erodes a little more. Relationships strain because patience thins. Stress rises, and the laughter once shared with friends now feels muffled under the weight of personal disappointment. Alex is trapped in a loop, exhausted by the effort of pretending that this cycle is temporary, while deep down, the habits have grown roots that seem unshakable. They have tried everything: strict diets, elaborate to-do lists, motivational videos, even punishing themselves with self-criticism. Yet each solution was either too extreme, too short-lived, or simply incompatible with life as it actually is. The familiar sense of defeat becomes a shadow companion, following Alex into every decision, making even small victories feel fleeting. And yet, beneath the frustration, a quiet longing remains, a yearning for something different, something that does not rely on sheer willpower or temporary bursts of discipline, but on a method that transforms habits at their core, something that could turn incremental effort into unstoppable momentum, without the guilt, the self-blame, or the roller coaster of motivation. It is here, at the point where desperation and curiosity intersect, that the idea of a unique Japanese system begins to emerge, one that does not scream for attention, but works silently, methodically, reshaping behavior in ways that feel natural, almost invisible. The philosophy behind it whispers of small, deliberate steps, patience, and the power of consistency over intent. Alex senses a possibility they have never felt with diets, apps, or motivational speeches: the chance to reclaim control, to rebuild identity one small, achievable action at a time. It is a promise that real change does not require heroics, but a quiet, almost imperceptible shift in approach. A system so simple that it feels revolutionary, precisely because it defies the chaos of typical, quick fixes. And in that quiet hope, a new story begins. A story where habits no longer dictate the life they live, but where life unfolds with intentionality, mastery, and a steady, unstoppable momentum. Alex had reached a point where excuses could no longer disguise the truth. The late-night binges left the stomach aching, the heart racing, a constant reminder of choices that had accumulated over months, even years. Work deadlines slipped, relationships frayed, and once simple pleasures now felt tainted by the shadow of guilt. One morning, a doctor's words landed like a hammer: "If you don't change now, your health is at serious risk." The reality struck with unbearable clarity. It was no longer about missed opportunities or fleeting frustration. It was about survival, about the future Alex wanted to live versus the one slowly unraveling through habits left unchecked. The stress of self-reproach, the constant self-monitoring that never seemed to last more than a few hours, had brought Alex to the edge of despair. It was a silent, creeping panic, the kind that whispers, "You've tried everything and failed. This is who you are." The turning point came unexpectedly, not through another motivational video or a trendy life hack, but through an encounter with someone who spoke with quiet certainty rather than urgency. A mentor, experienced and patient, noticed the strain in Alex's eyes and asked a simple question: "Have you considered that you don't need to overhaul everything at once?" The words felt absurd, Change without dramatic effort, without forceful discipline? It sounded impossible, almost naive. Yet, the calm authority in their voice sparked something deeper than curiosity. It sparked hope. There was no judgment, only observation, and a promise that transformation could come in a way that didn't demand heroics. Alex listened, skeptical but desperate, as the mentor outlined a principle foreign to the typical all-or-nothing mentality, Kaizen. Kaizen, the mentor explained, was the Japanese art of continuous improvement, a philosophy that focuses not on massive leaps, but on tiny, incremental steps. Each change, no matter how small, compounds over time, reshaping habits without triggering the brain's natural resistance to abrupt disruption. The revelation was simple, yet revolutionary. The repeated failures, the guilt, the endless cycles of motivation followed by collapse. They were not a sign of weakness, but a predictable response to trying to force change too quickly. The brain clings to patterns because they are familiar, comfortable, even if destructive. The mentor's insight reframed failure entirely. The problem was not Alex's willpower, it was the method. Small, deliberate adjustments, applied consistently, could circumvent the brain's defensive wiring, creating sustainable transformation from the ground up. Alex thought back to all the times they had tried to quit habits cold turkey, the endless resolutions that lasted maybe 2 before dissolving into frustration and self-blame. Each attempt had been met with the same pattern: intense effort followed by burnout, the illusion of progress replaced by the familiar spiral of. Yet now, the idea that incremental change could be more effective than extreme effort offered a quiet liberation. The burden of needing to overhaul everything at once lifted, replaced by the possibility of progress measured in millimeters rather than miles. It was a subtle shift, but its psychological weight was immense. Instead of fearing failure, Alex could embrace small victory, each one reinforcing identity, confidence, and agency. The mentor illustrated the first practical step: choose one small habit that feels manageable, something so minor it seems almost laughable, and commit to it daily. The change could be as simple as drinking an extra glass of water, writing a single sentence in a journal, or taking a 5-minute walk. The key was consistency, not intensity. Alex felt the tension in their chest ease slightly as the logic sank in. This was not a test of endurance, nor a race against time. It was a measured, intelligent approach to habit formation, designed to outsmart the resistance of the human brain and to embed transformation naturally into life. The simplicity of it was disarming, almost elegant, like discovering a secret path that had always been there but hidden beneath the noise of conventional advice. Even as hope began to stir, the mentor teased that Kaizen was only the first of several Japanese principles that, when combined, could create a holistic approach to breaking bad habits and building lasting change. HARA HACHI BU, the practice of moderation; Ikigai, the pursuit of meaningful purpose; WABI-SABI, embracing imperfection; and GAMBARU, the art of persistent effort. All were threads in a tapestry designed to transform not just actions, but identity itself. Alex's mind raced with possibility, the tension of past failures mingling with the thrill of discovery. For the first time in months, perhaps years, change felt not like a burden, a fight against oneself, but like a journey guided by wisdom, patient and methodical clarity. As the conversation ended, Alex walked away with a sense of fragile but tangible hope. The weight of despair had not vanished, but it was no longer crushing. It had been replaced by a plan, a philosophy, and the subtle but profound knowledge that habits could be changed from within, step by step, moment by moment. The rock bottom of yesterday had become the fertile ground for transformation, and Kaizen offered a doorway into a new life, one that promised not instant perfection, but deliberate mastery over time. The struggle, the failures, the anxiety, they were no longer signs of defeat, but markers on the path to real, sustainable change, a path that Alex was finally ready to walk. Alex woke one morning with a quiet determination, armed not with a new diet plan or a rigorous schedule, but with a single, almost laughable commitment: a glass of water immediately upon waking. The simplicity of it made the mind skeptical. Could such a trivial act truly matter? The inner voice whispered doubts, a mix of ridicule and disbelief. "You've spent years trying to change everything at once," it said. "Now, you think a glass of water is going to make a difference?" The skepticism was not merely, it was visceral, a mixture of impatience and embarrassment. Alex could already imagine friends rolling their eyes, if they ever learned about this small, almost childish ritual. And yet, beneath the mockery and doubt, there was a flicker of something else, a fragile sense of hope, the possibility that perhaps change did not need to roar to be real. The first sip felt ordinary, almost mundane, yet it carried a quiet significance. It was more than water. It was proof. Proof that Alex could keep a promise to oneself, however small, and that each morning could begin with an intentional act rather than the mindless pull of old routine. The mentor's words echoed, "Transformation is rarely sudden. It is continuous." Kaizen teaches that improvement compounds over time, that 1% gains, repeated consistently, are more powerful than drastic leaps that collapse under resistance. At first, Alex questioned the science behind it. Could a single act, repeated every day, truly reshape identity, rewiring habits deeply embedded over years? Yet the logic resonated, a blend of psychological insight and philosophical wisdom. Each micro step, the mentor explained, leverages the brain's reward system, creating momentum and reinforcing a sense of agency. Success, even tiny, breeds confidence. Confidence breeds more action. It is the quiet engine of transformation, invisible yet unstoppable. The second morning brought familiar doubts. Alex hesitated, staring at the glass on the counter. The mind conjured excuses, reasons why it could be skipped, why it might be irrelevant. Social ridicule emerged again, not from actual friends, but from internalized voices of past failures, of teasing classmates, of the cynical inner critic that had grown familiar over the year. And yet, Alex remembered the mentor's guidance. Resistance is a sign you are on the right path. The very act of choosing, in spite of doubt, was itself a micro-victory. Pouring the water, feeling its cool clarity slide down the throat, created an almost imperceptible shift. The morning felt a little more deliberate, a little less reactive, and for the first time in a long time, the day began with choice rather than habit. By the fourth day, something subtle began to happen. The mind noticed. It noticed that Alex was following through, that a tiny promise was kept, that discipline did not require heroics, but consistent. Motivation, once fleeting and unreliable, was replaced by a quiet sense of ownership. Alex no longer questioned whether change was possible. Each completed day whispered that it was, in fact, inevitable if approached intelligently. The mentor's principle of Kaizen revealed itself not in grand transformation, but in the gentle accumulation of small successes. A single glass of water became a psychological anchor, proof that identity could be rebuilt one deliberate action at a time. The contrast with previous all-or-nothing attempts was stark. Failure no longer felt like doom, and success no longer required overexertion. As the first week passed, Alex began to notice early emotional wins. A sharper mind, slightly more energy, a rising sense of pride that had nothing to do with external validation. There was empowerment in mastering something so simple, a reminder that true transformation does not demand perfection, only persistence. Friends might never understand the significance, and the world would not applaud, but internally, Alex felt a subtle shift, a realignment of self-perception. This micro step was proof that change could be gradual yet deeply effective, that small victories compound like drops filling a reservoir, until one day the reservoir overflows. The excitement was not loud, but it was powerful. It was the realization that sustainable change begins not with extreme, but with intentional, repeatable act. The mentor's voice returned, explaining the neuroscience behind the practice. Every time Alex followed through, neural pathways associated with the new habit strengthened, while the old patterns lost their dominance, not through punishment, but through neglect and gentle replacement. The Kaizen approach does not force the mind. It invites it to participate in change voluntarily. It leverages the brain's natural tendency toward reward, building momentum through consistent. Alex began to understand that this philosophy applied to every habit, from productivity to mindfulness to emotional regulation. One micro step could cascade into a lifestyle, each tiny improvement compounding until the old habits were replaced, almost imperceptibly, with behaviors aligned to purpose, health, and self-respect. By the end of the second week, Alex felt a quiet confidence previously unimaginable. The act of drinking a simple glass of water each morning had become a ritual, a symbolic yet tangible declaration of agency. Doubts and ridicule had faded into background noise. Each morning, the repetition reinforced a narrative of capability. Alex was someone who could keep promises, who could build momentum, who could change not through force, but through strategy and patience. The first micro step was no longer trivial, it was foundational. It was proof that Kaizen was not just philosophy, but action. That transformation is a series of intentional choices, each one tiny yet cumulatively unstoppable. And so Alex's journey continued, each day beginning with water, each moment reinforcing identity, each micro step quietly reshaping life. Skepticism remained, as it always does, but it no longer ruled the narrative. Instead, the story had shifted. Success was no longer a distant, heroic ideal, but a daily, attainable reality, built from repetition, reflection, and the relentless patience of Kaizen. One glass of water, one deliberate choice, had become the first thread in a tapestry of sustainable change, demonstrating the extraordinary power of small actions compounded over time, and opening the door to a life intentionally designed rather than habitually endured. By the third week, Alex began to feel a subtle but undeniable shift. The morning glass of water had become routine, a quiet anchor in an otherwise chaotic day. Yet, the mentor suggested it was time to build on that foundation, to layer habits in a way that would compound change rather than rely on single victories. The first edition seemed almost modest: portion control during meals, a practice guided by the Japanese principle of HARA HACHI BU. The philosophy, the mentor explained, is simple yet profound. Eat until you are 80% full, not stuffed, not deprived. At first, the rule felt strange, almost uncomfortable. Social gatherings, work lunches, family dinners, everywhere Alex turned, the instinct was to overfill, to indulge without pause. The mind rebelled, insisting that hunger was real, that moderation was restrictive, even unnatural. But the mentor's calm words lingered. Your brain is not your enemy. It simply responds to patterns. If you practice restraint gently, consistently, it learns a new default. HARA HACHI BU is not about punishment. It is about harmony with your body and self. The first attempt was humbling. At a colleague's birthday lunch, Alex took a smaller portion, leaving the plate only partially full. For a moment, a surge of self-consciousness hit, the quiet panic of social judgment. Would everyone notice? Would they think it odd? Would it feel like failure if satisfaction wasn't immediate? Yet, something remarkable happened. Eating slowly, attentively, Alex noticed subtle signs of fullness earlier than ever before, a gentle satisfaction rather than the heavy lethargy that usually followed. The internal victory was quiet but profound. It was proof that incremental restraint could coexist with pleasure, that moderation could be an ally rather than a limitation. The shift was internal, imperceptible to others, yet transformative in its psychological. Alex felt a growing sense of control, not over food itself, but over the decisions that defined identity. Of course, setbacks emerged, as they always do. One evening, at a friend's dinner party, Alex indulged more than intended, swayed by conversation, laughter, and the familiar pull of comfort. The old inner critic threatened to pounce, whispering that all progress had been wasted, that failure was proof of inherent weakness. But the mentor had prepared Alex for this moment, instilling the principle of WABI-SABI, the acceptance of imperfection. In Japanese aesthetics, WABI-SABI embraces the beauty of the incomplete, the transient, the flawed. Applied to habits, it means acknowledging that slips are inevitable and that they do not erase progress. Alex reminded themselves, one overeaten meal does not negate weeks of deliberate choice, nor does it define identity. It is merely data, a feedback point, a moment for reflection rather than self-punishment. The tension of failure softened, replaced by a quiet curiosity. What could be learned? What could be adjusted? What small change could be layered next? Building habits in this way required a new relationship with time and expectation. The brain's resistance remained, but the cumulative victories of water in the morning and mindful portioning created resilience. Each successful execution of HARA HACHI BU reinforced the neural pathways that supported agency. Each acceptance of WABI-SABI's philosophy eased the guilt that previously sabotaged effort. Alex noticed subtle improvements in energy, mood, and mental clarity. The daily choices began to feel like acts of identity shaping, rather than tedious self-discipline. The ordinary became extraordinary precisely because it was consistent and intentional. Even small deviations now held value. They revealed weaknesses in strategy, opportunities to refine, rather than signs of personal inadequacy. As habits layered, new psychological dynamics emerged. The 1% improvements, once isolated in a single morning routine, began to compound. Confidence expanded beyond water and meals. It seeped into productivity, communication, and self-perception. Alex began arriving at work with a sense of preparedness, previously foreign, noticing the difference in focus when fueled by mindful eating rather than reactive indulgence. Relationships subtly shifted as well. Colleagues and friends responded to a new calm assertiveness, unaware that the change originated in minor, incremental actions rather than grand gestures. The contrast with prior self, who had been reactive, guilt-ridden, and easily discouraged, became stark. Identity itself was shifting, quietly but inexorably, as the practices of Kaizen, HARA HACHI BU, and WABI-SABI worked together in concert. Yet tension remained, as it must for any meaningful transformation. Social pressure was relentless. Late-night invitations, indulgent meals, celebrations where restraint felt conspicuous. Internal resistance flared unpredictably. Some mornings, the water glass felt heavy, portion control seemed burdensome, and the temptation to revert to old patterns whispered with persuasive familiarity. Each setback presented a psychological challenge, a moment where the old self and the emerging self collided. But now, equipped with philosophy, strategy, and perspective, Alex approached these moments differently. Setbacks became part of the narrative, not the conclusion. The mentor had emphasized that layering habits is not linear, it is iterative. Slips are data, adjustments are natural, and incremental improvement is cumulative, not contingent on perfection. The awareness that identity could evolve despite imperfection created a buffer against discouragement. The power of layered habits was not simply in their practical effects, but in their psychological architecture. One micro step reinforced the next, creating a network of behavioral scaffold. Morning water heightened awareness and intention. HARA HACHI BU shaped mindful consumption. WABI-SABI instilled acceptance and resilience. Together, they formed a lattice that supported emerging habits in multiple dimensions of life. Even small emotional wins like noticing fullness before overeating or pausing without self-reproach after a social slip became milestones, psychologically reinforcing momentum. Alex began to notice the subtle pride in consistency, the gentle sense of empowerment that arises not from grand transformation, but from the deliberate accumulation of tiny, intelligent choices. The open loop of potential continued to tantalize. Kaizen had begun with a glass of water, but the mentor hinted that these practices were gateways, not endpoints. HARA HACHI BU and WABI-SABI were now integrated, yet the broader system held more principles waiting to compound and guide Alex towards sustainable transformation. Ikigai, purpose-driven action, and GAMBARU, persistent effort in the face of resistance. Each principle promised to layer seamlessly upon the other, creating a holistic approach to habit mastery that was as psychologically nuanced as it was practically effective. The suspense of discovery created a subtle a motivation to not out of fear of failure, but out of curiosity, empowerment, and the visible proof of identity in transformation. By the end of this phase, Alex no longer measured success solely by immediate outcome. Progress had become a process, one built upon deliberate, incremental choices, conscious awareness, and philosophical resilience. Setbacks no longer felt catastrophic. They were signals for adjustment. Social pressures no longer dictated behavior. Internal alignment and layered practice. Identity had begun to shift in subtle but undeniable ways, moving from reactive and self-critical to intentional and self-directed. The mind, once a relentless saboteur, now became a participant, learning through repetition, reinforcement, and reflection. Layering habits had revealed the quiet, compounding power of philosophy in action, demonstrating that meaningful change is rarely explosive. It is the sum of persistent, deliberate micro-steps, guided by wisdom, patience, and self-compassion. Weeks turned into months, and Alex began to notice subtle but undeniable changes. The morning glass of water was no longer an act of discipline, but a familiar rhythm, a starting point that anchored each day. Portion control had become natural, and the acceptance of imperfection, the quiet wisdom of WABI-SABI, reduced the self-recrimination that had once dominated life. But it was not only the habits themselves that had transformed. It was Alex's sense of self, the internal narrative, the identity that had long felt fractured and inconsistent. Each micro-success had compounded, reinforcing the idea that Alex was someone who followed through, someone capable of deliberate choice rather than reactive behavior. The internal tension that had once defined every decision had begun to dissolve, replaced by a quiet steadiness, a growing sense of competence and agency that reshaped not only routines, but perception itself. The mentor introduced the next principle at precisely the right moment, when Alex had begun to feel the momentum of consistent action. GAMBARU, the Japanese art of perseverance. It is not heroics, the mentor explained, but a steadfast commitment to persist, even when the path is unclear or the results are invisible. GAMBARU was the recognition that mastery is built not in bursts of inspiration, but in repeated effort, in showing up consistently, even when the outcome is uncertain. Alex had already glimpsed this through small victories, the morning rituals, mindful eating, but GAMBARU reframed the mindset entirely. Each micro step was no longer merely a habit. It was a deliberate act of endurance and identity formation. The significance was profound. The struggle was no longer a measure of weakness, but a mark of alignment with a greater version of self. Internal transformation accelerated as Alex began to internalize the idea of purpose through Ikigai. The mentor's explanation was simple, yet resonant. Ikigai is what gives life meaning, the intersection of what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what sustains you. Alex had often felt adrift, making choices out of obligation, fear, or habit rather than alignment with deeper purpose. As habits compounded and as GAMBARU reinforced persistence, the emergence of Ikigai provided a framework to connect actions to identity. Drinking water each morning, moderating portions, persisting through moments of temptation. They were no longer isolated exercises in self-control, but deliberate steps toward a life aligned with values, contribution, and personal fulfillment. The small victories accumulated into a sense of direction, each act now serving as a signal of who Alex was becoming, rather than merely what they were trying to achieve. The psychological payoff was profound. Energy returned in ways Alex had not experienced in years. Afternoons no longer dragged with fatigue and regret. The mind was sharper, more focused, more resilient. Confidence, once fleeting and fragile, became steady, rooted in the repeated proof that one could act intentionally, honor commitments, and respond with wisdom rather than impulse. Relationships also shifted quietly but meaningfully. Friends and colleagues noticed a calm assertiveness, a grounded presence that had been absent before. Conversations became more attentive, interactions more genuine, as Alex's internal alignment radiated externally. The subtle changes in identity now manifested in the quality of engagement with others, a reflection of internal coherence rather than conscious effort to appear disciplined. Setbacks still occurred, as they always do in life. There were evenings when indulgence tempted, days when energy lagged, moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But now, setbacks were no longer catastrophic. The combined principles of Kaizen, HARA HACHI BU, WABI-SABI, GAMBARU, and Ikigai provided a psychological scaffolding that reframed failure as feedback. Each lapse became a signal to adjust, to observe, to learn, rather than an indictment of character. The old voice of doubt, which had once dictated self-worth, now held little power. Alex's identity had shifted from one defined by inconsistency to one defined by intentionality, persistence, and purpose. Even mistakes were integrated into the narrative of growth, rather than separation from it. Daily actions began to carry symbolic meaning. Filling the glass of water was no longer trivial. It was an affirmation of self-trust. Choosing a smaller portion of food at lunch became an act of harmony with the body and recognition of long-term well-being. Persevering through work challenges, social obligations, and personal temptations became evidence of alignment with a larger purpose. Each act, though small in isolation, compounded psychologically, reinforcing a sense of mastery and reinforcing the identity of a person who naturally embodies these habits. Alex no longer measured success in outcomes alone. Success was now measured by congruence between action, intention, and identity. This shift transformed every decision, infusing daily life with a sense of empowerment that had previously seemed unattainable. Mentally, Alex experienced a remarkable clarity. The chatter of internal criticism, the habitual self-doubt, and the anxiety that had once defined even simple choices were replaced by a quiet confidence grounded in repeated demonstration of capability. Each morning, as the day began, there was a sense of readiness rather than apprehension. Goals, both personal and professional, became actionable rather than abstract, guided by the intersection of persistence and purpose. GAMBARU ensured follow-through, while Ikigai provided alignment, creating a feedback loop that reinforced both the habits themselves and the emerging identity. The transformation was no longer temporary or situational. It was structural, embedded in the neural and psychological architecture of daily life. Emotionally, the impact was equally significant. Alex felt lighter, more present, more capable of engagement without the weight of guilt or regret. The small wins accumulated into emotional resilience, allowing for connection with friends and family that was previously strained by distraction, fatigue, or internal frustration. Confidence was no longer performative. It emerged organically from a lived experience of capability, integrity, and alignment. The energy that once drained from constant battle with self now flowed into creativity, productivity, and meaningful interaction. Life began to feel expansive, rich with possibility, rather than constricted by habit-driven anxiety. Even socially, the identity shift became apparent. Invitations that would have triggered overindulgence were approached with calm strategy. Challenges that would have caused stress were met with measured persistence. Alex's sense of agency was no longer contingent on circumstance, but cultivated through consistent micro-successes, philosophical guidance, and integration of purpose-driven action. Others noticed the quiet transformation, though its roots were invisible. A disciplined mind, a steady presence, and an unwavering sense of self. This was the ultimate payoff, not simply a list of habits, but a fully internalized identity, capable of sustaining growth in a complex, unpredictable world. The mentor's guidance continued to resonate, a reminder that transformation is iterative, layered, and deeply psychological. Each principle reinforced the next. Kaizen provided the method. HARA HACHI BU and WABI-SABI moderated action and expectation. GAMBARU ensured persistence, and Ikigai anchored purpose. Together, they created a coherent system that allowed Alex to move from reactive survival to proactive mastery. The change was no longer about effort or sacrifice. It was about becoming the person who naturally embodied the habits, whose identity and action were inseparable. This alignment created a resilience that made temporary setbacks irrelevant, momentum self-sustaining, and life increasingly aligned with values and goals. As Alex reflected on the journey, the transformation was unmistakable. The old self, driven by guilt, impulsivity, and sporadic motivation, felt distant, almost foreign. The new self, built through deliberate micro-actions, philosophical wisdom, and persistent purpose, felt natural, effortless, and authentic. Energy, confidence, and relational depth had returned. Choices no longer felt burdensome. They felt like expressions of an identity fully realized. The habits, once external impositions, were now internalized aspects of being. Change was no longer something Alex pursued. It was who Alex had become, embodied in every thought, action, and interaction, creating a foundation for lasting transformation and the potential for long-term impact in every domain of life. With the foundation firmly in place, Alex began to notice that the principles of Kaizen, HARA HACHI BU, WABI-SABI, GAMBARU, and Ikigai were not confined to personal habits. They could transform entire areas of life. The morning glass of water and portion-controlled meals had evolved into a confidence that rippled outward, affecting career, relationships, and finances. Tasks that had once felt overwhelming were now approached incrementally, one small, deliberate action at a time. The mentor's words echoed, "The same micro steps that change habits can restructure your life." Momentum compounds in all areas when guided by intention and persistence. Alex applied this insight to work, tackling projects in 15-minute segments, breaking complex tasks into achievable increments, and celebrating each completion. The sense of achievement was immediate and tangible, replacing procrastination with progress. Slowly, the perception of work shifted from burden to opportunity. In social and family life, the effects were equally profound. Conversations with friends no longer carried the undercurrent of distraction or irritation. Alex listened more attentively, responded more thoughtfully, and navigated conflicts with patience honed through months of micro-practice. Family interaction, once tense, due to impatience and became spaces of presence and engagement. Small changes in self-regulation, pausing before reacting, expressing gratitude intentionally, offering support, created a chain reaction. Those around Alex began to mirror this energy, a subtle but unmistakable ripple effect. Close friends remarked on the change, not as dramatic transformation, but as consistent calm, reliability, and presence that inspired others to reflect on their own patterns. It became clear, disciplined microaction, reinforced by philosophical grounding, could extend influence far beyond the individual. Career advancement followed a similar pattern. Alex's incremental improvements in time management, focus, and follow-through began to produce measurable results. Projects completed ahead of deadlines, consistent engagement in team collaboration, and the ability to maintain composure under pressure distinguished Alex from colleagues. Promotions, recognition, and new opportunities emerged, not from sudden brilliance, but from reliable, persistent execution. The hallmark of GAMBARU in action. When setbacks occurred, such as an unexpectedly difficult client or a missed deadline, the internalized philosophy mitigated frustration. Rather than despair, Alex approached the situation analytically, identifying small adjustments, applying WABI-SABI to accept imperfections, and returning to action without the guilt or self-criticism that had once derailed progress. Success was no longer fragile or circumstantial. It was resilient and replicable. Financial management, previously a source of stress and impulsive decision-making, also benefited from the layered approach. Alex implemented micro-steps, tracking each of small expenses daily, setting aside a consistent percentage of income, and gradually adjusting spending habits. These incremental changes, when practiced consistently, created compounding results over time. Small victories reinforced discipline, while the acceptance of occasional overspending, guided by WABI-SABI, prevented discouragement. Alex's financial confidence grew, no longer reactive to immediate impulses, but guided by long-term purpose and sustainable strategy. The practical impact was undeniable. By focusing on small, deliberate actions and embedding them in identity, financial stability became attainable without the pressure of extreme austerity or dramatic lifestyle overhauls. Setbacks continued to arise, however, testing consistency and psychological resilience. A major work presentation went poorly, leading to self-doubt. A family gathering involved tension that triggered old impulsive responses. Even social indulgences occasionally led to overeating or momentary lapses in focus. But each incident was reframed through the system. Kaizen reminded Alex that progress was iterative, that one slip did not erase months of incremental victories. HARA HACHI BU reinforced moderation and balance in responses. WABI-SABI allowed acceptance of imperfection without internalized failure. GAMBARU ensured persistence in action, and Ikigai anchored purpose to maintain alignment with values and long-term goals. Setbacks were no longer existential threats. They became opportunities for recalibration and further growth. The universality of the system became increasingly evident. Habits, career projects, relational dynamics, and financial choices were all subject to the same principle: small, deliberate, consistent action, reinforced by patience, acceptance, and purpose, produced transformation that was cumulative, self-sustaining, and deeply psychological. Each area reinforced the others, increased self-discipline, improved work performance, which reduced stress at home, which reinforced clarity in financial decisions. The web of incremental change became a feedback loop, magnifying impact beyond the original habit. Friends and family noticed the difference, inspired by consistency rather than spectacle. The subtle influence of daily micro-action became a form of social proof, demonstrating that transformation was attainable and sustainable when approached systematically and intentionally. Emotionally, Alex experienced the most profound effects. The persistent anxiety, guilt, and self-doubt that had characterized daily life were replaced by energy, focus, and calm confidence. The sense of self shifted from reactive and fragmented to proactive and coherent. Identity was no longer contingent on external validation or short-term results. It was anchored in the consistent practice of aligned action. Confidence radiated in subtle ways, through presence in conversation, patience in interactions, and persistence in personal and professional endeavors. Relationships deepened as trust and reliability became habitual. Colleagues, friends, and family responded to this transformation, not because Alex had forced change externally, but because the internal shift naturally influenced behavior, creating ripples of effect throughout the social ecosystem. The mentor emphasized that the key to long-term success was consistency over intensity. The system was not about dramatic efforts, rapid overhauls, or heroic feats. It was about sustainable design, resilience, and reflection. Alex realized that the true leverage lay not in isolated moments of extraordinary effort, but in the aggregation of micro-actions applied relentlessly, guided by philosophical principles and purposeful in each choice, no matter how small, was an affirmation of identity, a reinforcement of competence, and a step toward the person Alex intended to. The system's adaptability became evident. Whether applied to health, work, relationships, or finances, the same core principles yielded predictable, compounding results. By the end of this phase, Alex could see the long-term potential in a way that was both practical and inspiring. Change was no longer a distant goal or abstract concept. It was tangible, measurable, and embedded in daily life. The ripple effects extended beyond personal benefit, influencing social circles, family dynamics, and professional environments. Setbacks remained, but they were no longer defining. Recovery was automatic, guided by internalized philosophy, consistent micro-action. The life once dominated by reactive habits and sporadic motivation had transformed into one of intentionality, resilience, and purpose. Each day, each choice, and each interaction reflected the quiet, compounding power of the Japanese system, demonstrating that sustainable transformation is achievable when micro-steps, philosophy, and identity align. Alex's journey became living proof that the principles of Kaizen, HARA HACHI BU, WABI-SABI, GAMBARU, and Ikigai are not limited to theory. They are practical, adaptable, and universally applicable, capable of reshaping behavior, mindset, and social influence simultaneously. The transformation was no longer hypothetical. It was observable in energy levels, emotional stability, career progression, financial management, and relational depth. And for anyone willing to commit to incremental action, acceptance, and purpose, the system offered not only the tools for personal mastery, but the model for a life whose impact extends far beyond the individual, creating enduring change in every domain touched by intention and persistence. Now, it is your turn. Imagine standing where Alex once stood, overwhelmed by habits that undermine your energy, relationships, and purpose. Unsure if change is even possible. The truth is, it is possible. But it begins not with radical overhauls or heroic feats, but with one microscopic habit, one deliberate, repeatable action that requires almost no effort, yet carries disproportionate power. What could that habit be for you? A glass of water each morning, 5 minutes of focused reflection, a single page of reading, a short walk, a note of gratitude, something so small that it seems almost trivial. And yet, triviality is deceptive. When applied consistently, it becomes the catalyst for transformation, the entry point into a life designed rather than endured. Kaizen teaches us that progress compounds, that the smallest improvement repeated daily reshapes identity, rewires the brain, and generates momentum that accelerates across every area of life. As you choose your first micro step, remember the lessons of HARA HACHI BU. Moderation is not restriction. It is a conscious, sustainable rhythm that allows growth without collapse. Do not attempt to perfect everything at once. Instead, honor the principle of WABI-SABI, embracing the beauty of imperfection. There will be days when your habit faltered, when distractions or fatigue threaten to undo your commitment. These moments are not failure. They are part of the journey, signals to observe, adjust, and continue. In fact, they are essential. Transformation is rarely linear, and the mastery of resilience is cultivated not in flawless execution, but in the deliberate choice to return to practice after every lapse. Each return reinforces identity, builds confidence, and strengthens the neurological pathways that make consistent easier tomorrow than it was today. GAMBARU, the Japanese art of perseverance, reminds you that persistence is more potent than intensity. Change does not demand heroics or grand declaration. It demands showing up day after day, even when motivation wanes. The repetition of tiny intentional acts embeds habits, not in discipline alone, but in identity. When a micro step becomes a natural part of who you are, effort dissolves into expression. This is the point where transformation becomes inevitable, when your actions reflect your values, purpose, and self-concept simultaneously. Ikigai reinforces this, anchoring your micro steps to purpose. Ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to build? How can this single action align with my broader goals, values, and contribution? The answer transforms a trivial habit into a meaningful signal of identity, an investment in the person you are becoming. The challenge is simple, but it is not without its psychological depth. Public accountability strengthens commitment. Tell a friend, post about it, track it visibly. When others witness your action, the commitment becomes more than personal. It becomes social. You are no longer acting in isolation, but participating in a subtle contract with yourself and your environment. The science of behavioral psychology confirms this. Accountability increases the likelihood of adherence. While repeated, visible success reinforces self-efficacy. Each completed day, however small the step, becomes proof that change is attainable. Each lapse becomes an opportunity to return stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Reflection is equally important. Take time daily or weekly to observe the ripple effects of your micro step. Notice how energy shifts, focus improves, or confidence emerges. Observe relational changes. Are interactions smoother, more attentive, more patient? Observe internal shifts. Does self-talk become gentler, more encouraging, more deliberate? These reflections anchor learning, deepen understanding, and reinforce identity. Change is not simply about performing an action. It is about integrating it into the narrative of who you are and who you intend to become. Each insight compounds, informing the next step, creating a feedback loop that magnifies transformation over time. Consistency over 14 days is the first test. 2 weeks may seem brief, yet within this span, the nervous system begins to adapt. Habits begin to solidify, and small victories accumulate into meaningful psychological momentum. If you commit, even for this short period, you will experience a sense of mastery, proof that deliberate action produces tangible change. The initial micro-step does not need to be permanent, but it must be consistent. It is the spark that ignites identity-shifting momentum, revealing the hidden power of small, intelligent action over time. Ask yourself now, what is the one micro-step you will commit to today? Can you imagine the ripple effects if repeated daily for 2 weeks? Energy, confidence, relationships, career, financial decision, all begin to shift, subtly at first, then profoundly. This is the essence of Kaizen and its companion principles. Incremental improvement, moderation, acceptance of imperfection, perseverance, and alignment with purpose. Each principle reinforces the other, creating a framework for sustained change that is psychologically robust and universally applicable. The system is not magic. It is science and philosophy working together, guiding you from intention to identity. Finally, embrace the emotional payoff. The act of committing to one small habit is itself empowering. It proves that change is not reserved for the exceptionally motivated or disciplined. It proves that anyone, regardless of past failures or current struggles, can begin the process of transformation with a single step. The true power lies not in the step itself, but in the cumulative effect of repetition, reflection, and alignment. By choosing today, committing to consistency, and integrating these principles, you are not merely performing a task. You are taking ownership of identity, creating momentum, and signaling to yourself and the world that change is possible. So choose your first micro step today. Commit to it for 14 days. Reflect, persist, and embrace imperfection. Notice the subtle shifts, the small victories, and the growing alignment of action and purpose. Share it, track it, and allow the momentum to compound. The transformation begins not with an extraordinary effort, but with a tiny intentional act, repeated consistently. Your life does not need to be overhauled at once. It needs to start, and it needs to continue. This is your moment. The system is proven, the philosophy is timeless, and the potential is yours. Take the step, no matter how small, and begin the journey of becoming the person who naturally embodies the habits, values, and purpose you desire.